So a little close-up demonstration for you on needle felting, on the basic techniques of needle felting. We'll start off by doing largish areas, which you can do with a single needle. There are multi-needle tools, but we'll just use a single needle. I'm using one in a holder here to start with. Basically, just lay your wool down and start stabbing. So those little barbs on the needle will push the fibres through to the back of the felt, to your base felt, and it means that the top fibres will hold on to that base felt, and that's actually felting the fibres. You need to make sure you go straight up and down. Needles do break, so try and go straight up and down. Here's a close-up of what I'm doing. So the needle's just pushing in straight up and down, catching those top fibres, pushing them through the bottom felt and catching them all together. Okay. You can just use a needle on its own. It doesn't have to be in a holder. It's personal preference, really. You might find you find one easier than the other, either with a holder or without. And add a little bit more wool if you want to get a bit more density of colour. You can do this wool in quite thick layers. It doesn't have to be too fine, really, at this stage. And that creates a little bit of 3D texture as well. So again, just keep stabbing straight up and down, and that's creating quite a thick, full, solid colour there. Just keep stabbing up and down. You can also create lines, so we'll do a slightly thicker line to start with, just separating off a few threads. So not very many fibres at all there, really. And then you just want to start stabbing that line, just easing the fibres in the direction you want to go with the needle and stabbing them. The more you stab, the more you needle felt, the more defined that line will become, because you're gathering all the threads together. You can just see them, just see there. I'm just pulling all those fibres very, very gently with the needle. Bear in mind, needles do break, so you certainly don't want to put any pressure on the needle. I'm just almost stroking the fibres in the right direction. And as I say, the more you stab it, the more you needle felt it, the firmer and more defined that line will become. This is useful for things like fence posts or sort of certain features that you want a very sort of clear, quite hard line actually in some things. You can use very, very few fibres, so you could almost not see these with the naked eye. There's hardly any fibres there, but you'll see that once I actually start needle felting them, that line will appear almost out of nowhere. I mean, you can hardly see the fibres, but once you needle felt it, that line will appear. So whereas the bottom line might be useful for fence posts, this might be the actual fence wire that you're doing at this stage. So you can work with very, very tiny amounts of fibre, almost so little you can hardly see them. And you can see there how the fibres have pushed through to the back of the felt. But from the front, there's your needle felting. So those are the basic techniques of needle felting. You can also make little dots or almost, they're a little bit like a French knot almost. And you start by just needle punching a few fibres in place, and then gather those fibres together very gently with your needle. So the needle's actually sort of in mid-air there, where it's gathering them all together. I always think of a candy floss machine when you're gathering all those little loose fibres together and popping them in there. But as I say, your needle's really in mid-air when it's gathering those together. It's not scraping along the actual base felt itself. Just tidy up those edges, just bring those last few threads in. And you can do the same here. Just gather those loose threads at the edges, neaten those up if you want a nice neat edge for something, and just pull them gently into where you want them to be, and then just lock them in place by needle felting them. So that's how you can get quite a neat edge on something. That's particularly important if you've got something like a building or a bridge, that type of thing that really needs quite a defined edge. Obviously, if it's something like a Highland cow, you can be quite loose and fluffy. But for some things, you want a nice defined edge. So here we go at the end again, just gathering those fibres in very, very gently. Again, being very aware that the needle's very, very delicate.